Thanks, guys. On this week's ATV Ship Shape, we're sitting down with Associate Technical Artist, Mr. Patrick Salerno. Patrick, how you doing, man?
Hey, how are you?
Now, Patrick has been working for several weeks, if not months, on LODs for our ships. I'll come by his desk every once in a while and be like, what are you working on? He's like, more LODs, man. So we realized we wanted to show what LODs were, how important they are to the game, because they're pretty important to the overall performance of making Star Citizen work.
Definitely.
Start us off with the most basic, what is an LOD?
Okay, well, to start, an LOD, for those who don't know, are a level of detail or level of display model. Basically what that means is, kind of in the simplest terms, it could be a little more complicated, but basically the model changes as you get farther away from the camera. So you start out with like a multi-million poly model, and then by the time it's a few pixels big, it should be maybe a few thousand polys with maybe a couple materials versus, 20-something materials, because the ships get fairly complicated. When you're looking at a ship up close, it's full detail. It might be a million polys or, somewhere around there. You got all these moving parts, but as you get farther away, you obviously want to play with other people, So they're huge moving ships with lots of parts have to come in, and we have a very complicated sort of algorithm that works, but simple rules that I kind of follow and help develop and help teach the other artists how to use properly. But basically, a couple steps. I generate LODs, the level of detail models, and then I go through and I look for meshes that I may need to combine as I go down, to save performance. Less meshes equals less memory. Same thing, we have what are called material IDs. Every texture, whether it's like paint or rivets or detail or an engine glow or any sort of material that's on your ship, can also be condensed down. If you're like really far away, you're not gonna see that little rivet under the wing, So what do? You say, okay, poof, you are now the same gray that the base ship is, right? So you try and make logical deductions where to go through. It's kind of like a puzzle.
So it's kind of like you're making 6 different versions of the ship, each one with progressively less detail, and we are swapping them out on the fly as you get farther and closer. And if we do our job right, you won't notice the change.
That's exactly.
All right.
That's exactly what it is.
So why don't you take us through the technical aspects, the creation of an LOD then?
Okay, so to start, before we even, start anything, we have to ask ourselves, what are the requirements? So we usually start in the CryEngine, right? I like to take a look at the model first, obviously. You don't want to redo every single thing. Some parts are lovingly hand caressed, and you want to make sure you don't butcher other people's work. So I come in and I take a look at the model, and I've got a few tools here at my disposal that I use to determine whether the model needs work or not. So basically the first test is to take a ship, and like Cutlass for now, and then we just back out. Right, and we do it kind of slow because right now what we're doing is we're looking for material changes that don't match, or chunks like that, chunks of the ship that kind of just disappear, right? Like that's the stuff I'm taking a look for. That and just the model maybe looking really gross. It happens. I'll show you what I mean by really gross too, because if the algorithm changes, it affects how the LEDs are. Sometimes I have to go back and forth and fix them, right? So up here on this top menu set, I have a few tools at my disposal to sort of force the model to show me different LODs. So we have levels 1 through 5, right? These are the varying distances for the most part. So we go 1, and we can see we start to lose a little bit, a very minute bit of detail, right about there. And then we go 2, we start to lose more detail, 3, 4, 5, right? Until the whole thing just kind of looks really bad, And the thing is though, you're only gonna see that from like really, really far away. So if we come all the way out here, and we can see we have these little boxes that show, they're not really boxes on your screen, obviously, they look kind of green chunks, but basically those show that an object doesn't even have an LOD at all. That means that I have to go in and say, oh man, why doesn't such and such part do it? Because if you do not have an LOD, it's always 100%, right? You're rendering like a million poly spec from like a mile away. It's unnecessary. We added a thing now where if something doesn't have more than one LOD, the whole object doesn't appear. So that's kind of part of the pass that I'm going through now, is we updated some of our rules, and I'm making sure that every single flyable ship and ship coming out is in line with our sort of stuff. So just to kind of move on to the next phase, we took a look. Everything doesn't really look too bad, but there's a couple areas that I think could use some work. One part is the body. Basically, these ships are built of many different pieces, right? So when you see a ship just sitting there, it's combined from like just a bajillion different little parts that snap, like the nacelles and the thrusters and the engines and the guns are all just little invisible boxes you'll soon see in Max that call in another file through a helper. So when you're working on something, and you're like, oh man, the ship looks good, but the weapon's all looking pop, 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 right? How do you fix that? Well, you go into another file and do that. So right now we're going to toy at the cutlass. So let's take a look. Basically how this is laid out, it looks kind of like a mess. If I unhide all, I'll show you. You come in and here you go. Normally what we do is we don't just like click through everything, right? That's time consuming. I would actually select the body, and then I would say, okay, well that's what I need to work on right now. So I'd isolate that. And here we are. So we have our body, and over in my hierarchy, I had to flip to that a lot. I can just type, I can go down to body here, and I can see its hierarchy. And to me, what that means is basically you have the main piece of geo, which is this is the body, that's its name. And you have LOD, 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 right? Like with the same name. That's how the computer knows to recognize it as the body. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now say we didn't actually want these, right? I could actually, like these were all bad for some reason. This is just an experiment. So we delete those, and now our body has no LODs. If I bring it into the game and I re-export it, it won't change at all.
Okay.
So now what the trick is, I need to say, you know what? This is currently, if we look at my specs over here, right, it's way too many tries. It's like, you know, a bajillion tries here. So let's just click out of our object. And here's the automated part, right? This is the part you make a sandwich for. We go down to our LOD generator tool that we have, which uses a program called Simply Gone in the background. And we need 5 LODs. Now, I get to choose from a list here. This is where I have to start eyeballing parts. I say to myself, does this have like 1,000,000 polys? If so, I need to do very low to make sure that it's percentages. Like, I want to chop away 70% of the polygons of last time each time I go down, kind of just to go from 1,000,000 to like 1,500 polys. So let's click go. So we'll do very low, and I'll just do like 1 for now just to show you how it works, because this can be time consuming depending on what you do. Very low means I'm going to try and hack this thing to bits. So, okay, there we go. Our LODs have been generated. So now what we want to do is we want to take a look. Oh, like stupid shit like this. Lag all my day. So, so anyway, we come in, and now I'm like, okay, I have an LOD for the body. This is great. How do I go down there now? So now comes the next step. We generated an LOD. Do we have any meshes to combine? No, it's one big chunk. Okay, skip step 2. Step 3, optimize material IDs. What does that mean, you say? Well, we come into our body, and we come over to the object, and each polygon on this surface has what's called a material ID. What that means is that a texture or a picture can be assigned to that particular face. That's how we can create like complex details where we have paneling in some areas but flat colors in another, or different overlaid textures, et cetera, is we come in here and we have, in this material editor, we have a list of materials, right? And we say to ourselves, okay, how do I smush these down? Right, and that's where you just eyeball it back and forth between the editor and Max. You're looking at your LOD here, you're on LOD 1. So I would go to LOD 1, I'd force it, and I'd say, okay, you know, not much going on, we lost a couple, you know, maybe it looks good, maybe it's already the right shape, but I can save performance by crunching down a couple unnecessary materials that you won't see. Little things like that on each and every ship. It gives everyone those frames that they want, you know? Like, that's the most important part. It's all about the frames, man. 60 frames, 4K, you know? We got to get there, you know? But these are the steps it takes to go through and do it. And then after that, I just kind of back and forth between the export button, which basically takes it from Max, converts it to a format that then goes into the editor. And then we just go back and forth from there until we are happy with what we have, you know? No one would ever be happy seeing a ship like that. It's all like, you know? But at the end of the day, you shouldn't even really see it disappearing. And I can, you know, it's cool. I have a bunch of tools here. I can like color code it. I can analyze like all the different aspects of what makes a ship. Like, oh yeah, this is actually a really good call here. This actually
seizure mode.
Yeah, it's total like rave party mode, right? And yeah, so basically what this means is that I can come in and look at all this cool stuff and figure out, let me get rid of some of this text for you. Spelling is hard. Here we go. So basically these color-coded areas mean different things. This is how many materials each part has, for example. Everyone's done a kind of paint by numbers thing, right? That's exactly what this is. So everywhere you see a number is how many materials that specific part of the model has. By LOD 5, you basically want this whole thing to have like 1, maybe 2, 3, you know, which is basically major color changes. Is this like dark gray? Is this light gray? Is there a dash of yellow that I can see from a mile away? You know, it's stuff like that you really want to keep. and coming in and saying, okay, well, you know, I need cockpit glass shiny, so on and so forth. So let me see, there's one more that's useful here. And then let's get rid of the text by doing -3 versus the polarity. So basically what this is, as I was saying before, all of the models, the whole ship is considered of multiple components. Each of those components loads in separately, right? So you kind of want to optimize them so they all pop out at the same time, right? That's another thing I look for. I make sure that one part, like this one here, probably has less LEDs than the body. So you see he's smaller, maybe he has less pixels, less polygons, et cetera, et cetera. So the turret kind of goes first, goes twice, then the body, then into cells, light blue, light blue. Now you see it starts to flash saying, I don't have an LED past this point, right? Which in game kind of means it might disappear. That's something I have to look out for. So we come out, zoom out, until we hit the last one, which is that purple one. So that's how I gauge how far away this ship specifically would be noticeable. And then I would just go like this. Boom. And I'd see, does anything disappear? Does it look like the silhouette of the ship? Let me turn off the something. Trying to turn things off here. Trying to push buttons. Okay, trying to turn away the floor. There we go. No, it's got rid of everything. It's funny. Click those back on. All right, there. So that's a good way to see it. So from here, I just fly around the ship, and I make sure that it has the shape of a cutlass from a mile away. And it's flying away because I have physics on. Come back. There it is. Thank you, my spaceship. So that's pretty much it, right? Go through the levels, go through the phases, check to see if anything is wrong, check to see where I can optimize materials, combine meshes, et cetera, et cetera. Do that on every ship, and at the end of the day, someone somewhere will see an increase in performance and thank me without knowing my name.
Well, now you know the name of the person you can thank for your increase in frame
Well, there's
rates.
There's many people here working hard to keep your frames
When he
up.
came to me, he said he's the only person who's responsible for frame rate increase. And
No, he's been bothering me
his
for
attention.
weeks. For weeks, this guy. He's like, come on, man, what do you got? I'm like, dude, I'm optimizing. That's got to make
It's not
sure
sexy. It's not sexy, but it's important.
It is, it is. You're sitting here, you're making LEDs, and you know, it's just going to run a little bit better at the end of the day, and that's important because you got all these cool things, spaceships, planets, space stations, and I like frames, How am I supposed to get those headshots without 30 frames, 60 frames per second?
All right, man. Thank you so much, Patrick.
No problem.
That's LODs, Legions of Doom.
Levels of display.
Back to you guys.
All right, guys.